5 days on, and we're still none the wiser about the official cause of last week's devastating explosion on board the boat carrying the most recent group of asylum seekers. The government maintains it won't comment on the cause until the police investigation is complete, but the opposition claims the government's reticence is starting to look like a cover-up. Malcolm Turnbull has also continued to blame the government's policies for the increase in boat arrivals, and today called for the reintroduction of the Rudd government's temporary protection visas. Political editor Michael Brissenden reports.
I don't know what happened, you don't know what happened, and speculation is not appropriate.
They know full well what's happened. They've known for some time. They should tell the truth.
As the former US Defence Secretary Donald Rumsfeld once famously said, there are known knowns, there are things we know that we know, there are known unknowns, that is to say, there are things that we know we don't know, but there are also unknown unknowns, things we don't know we don't know. The whole sorry saga of the latest boatload of asylum seekers is a lot like that. There are some things the government can and will tell us, but not much. It's been 5 days now since the boat tragically caught fire and a media frenzy went up with it. Here's Bob Debus from last Thursday.
Are there suggestions from the officers at the scene that this was self-inflicted, that they doused the boat? Are you getting those reports?
It is clearly a possibility that that is what occurred, but we are not in a position to finally confirm that that is so or not. There will, of course, be a coronial inquiry, which, as someone has said, will take some time.
And here's Kevin Rudd today.
This government will not do anything to compromise a police investigation or compromise any possible prosecution of people smugglers, because people smugglers lie at the core of the challenge that we are dealing with this new threat emerging across our northern waters.
Prime Minister, what would your
Last one for you.
Do you know the cause of the fire on the ship, on the boat?
The matter is subject to a police investigation, and therefore we will know the conclusion of that police investigation once it is concluded, not prior to that.
Not much has changed, obviously. Why? Is it just police procedure, or does the spectre of 2001 also still loom large?
We will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
There's no denying the power of that political moment. 2001 was the start of years of divisive debate, even though asylum seekers arriving on boats make up just a small percentage of those seeking asylum in Australia every year. Last year, the figure was 4%. The largest number by far continue to arrive on a plane armed with a tourist visa or a student visa. But put that to one side, it's true there has been a small increase in the number of arrivals by boat this year. The opposition leader says government policy is to blame, in particular the decision to scrap the previous government's temporary protection visas.
Well, I think we've got to focus on the Rudd government's policy, Fran. I'll come back to where I think we should aim to go ideally.
Where is it wrong?
Well, the problem, where it's wrong is in sending the signals. You were just talking to Michelle about the temporary protection visas, and I think she fairly described them as making the achievement of permanent status in Australia less certain for people who arrive by boat. That was their deliberate purpose as a disincentive.
But they didn't work. TPVs were first introduced in 1999 with the support of the Labor opposition, but boat arrivals went up considerably in the next 2 years. So did the temperature inside the Liberal Party. Despite the obvious political success of the Howard government's tough line, it's well known that a small group of backbenchers that included Judy Moylan and Russell Broadbent felt particularly uncomfortable about the policy, and they've made it clear they're pretty uncomfortable about seeing it back on the political radar as well.
I think there is within the community a few people who demonise refugees and engage in scaremongering, and I think that kind of behaviour is to be condemned. It's despicable. And as I said, any attempts to politicise the issue of asylum seekers I think would be irresponsible. I wouldn't support it.
In fact, Judy Moylan argues TPVs actually increased the rate of arrivals because they only encouraged family members to take the risk with people smugglers because those on TPVs were not allowed to leave Australia. But despite the internal dissent, there was also plenty of internal support for the previous government's position. And many would certainly argue that TPVs, alongside other tough measures, like the Pacific solution, did eventually send a message to the people smugglers. Mr Turnbull isn't advocating a return to processing arrivals in Nauru. After all, the current government has decided to keep the Christmas Island facility running for that purpose. What he is calling for is a bit more information.
Certainly, the reintroduction of temporary protection visas should be high on the agenda. But what I'm calling for on the government to do is, firstly, to release all of the information about the incident on the boat. It is unbelievable that the government is stonewalling on this. They have all the facts. All of the naval personnel are back. They've all been interviewed. A number of the asylum seekers have been interviewed. The public are entitled to know what happened.
As we've heard, the government says we'll know that once the police investigations are complete. One thing we think we do know, though, is that according to some reports, the AFP warned the government recently that it was concerned that a change of policy could lead to an increase in boat arrivals. So far, the government has been reluctant to address that one.
Here we go.
But as any good politician knows, the best way to divert attention is to start digging in a different hole.
The severity of the global recession has made it impossible for Australia to avoid a further period of negative economic growth. The worst global economic recession in 75 years means it's inevitable that Australia too will be dragged into recession.
That may seem like a throwaway line, but it is a significant shift. Only last month, the Treasurer said he thought it would be virtually impossible for Australia to avoid a period of negative growth. And the Prime Minister said it was clear that the impact of a worsening global economic recession will make it virtually impossible for Australia to sustain a positive economic growth for the period ahead. That's perhaps a little like a known unknown. Now it seems a recession is inevitable, pretty close to what Donald Rumsfeld might describe as a known known.